If you voted for Brexit, how's it going so far for you? Is it everything you dreamed of? If you voted to remain, are you feeling as though you're stopping yourself from saying, I told you so? Well, our Prime Minister and the French President are, as you just heard, once again at loggerheads over fishing. The Brexit Minister is still trying to have the Northern Ireland Protocol, which he negotiated, changed. And we couldn't buy any petrol the other week as well. Now, a new poll says that nearly twice as many voters think that Brexit has been bad for Britain's economy as the number who think that it's been good for it. The survey was done by the pollster Opinion for yesterday's Observer newspaper. 44% told the survey that leaving the EU had harmed our economy. Only 25% said that it had benefited it. I discussed this earlier with Suzanne Evans. She's a political commentator and the director of the public affairs consultancy Political Insight. She also previously served as the deputy chairman of UKIP and was on the board of the Vote Leave campaign. And I asked if she understands why so many people seem to feel this way about Brexit now.
I think it's really difficult, isn't it? Because, yes, we've got Brexit done, but what happened the moment we got Brexit done is COVID came along. And I think what's happening here is that it's almost impossible now to separate the impact of Brexit from the impact of the government's response to the pandemic with lockdowns and the huge economic damage that has done. I'm not convinced, to be honest, that anyone can completely extrapolate out one from the other. It's just too complex right now. We haven't really had a chance to reap the benefits of Brexit because the whole global economy, the whole global supply chain has shut down. So whilst I'm sure that The Guardian, which of course The Observer, which took a very anti-Brexit line throughout the EU referendum campaign and of course has used every opportunity since to try and show that Brexit isn't working. I'm sure that it's lovely meat and potatoes and two veg for them. But to be honest, I just don't think it's fair to even ask that question right now, let alone to expect anybody to give a coherent, responsible, lucid, intelligent answer to it.
Yes, I wonder for how long the period in which it is too soon to tell will last.
I think that's a very good question. I'd be the first to say that Brexit isn't perfect. One of the things that, we always said was there are opportunities of Brexit and it's up to the government to take them. And if you have a government that isn't prepared to take those opportunities or potentially, as what's happened now, hasn't been able to take those opportunities because the much, much bigger issue of COVID came along, then I think that, it's a fair question. When can we actually start to reap the benefits of Brexit? I don't know. I think the answer to that is when worldwide governments come back to their senses, when they realise that we have to live with COVID. We can't continue to lock people up forever. We can't continue to completely destroy the economy, to keep countries shut, so on and so forth, and all the damaging things that happen because of lockdowns and other travel restrictions and restrictions on our lives. We have to move on from that. We have to accept COVID's going to be with us forever. Then we might perhaps have a chance to start delivering on some of those very promising messages that people like myself were putting out during the referendum campaign. The ability to trade with other countries, the ability to divest ourselves of red tape which holds back economic growth. We simply haven't had the opportunity yet.
Okay, well, we were trading with other countries when we're in the EU, and red tape has done nothing but increase on the outside of the EU. But taking all of that, and I understand why you would be disinclined to believe anything that is printed in the Observer. How about the UK's fiscal watchdog, which says that Brexit is going to hurt the economy more than the coronavirus pandemic? They said that leaving the European Union is going to reduce the size of the British economy by 4%. The pandemic will reduce it by a further 2%, twice as bad as COVID.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the figures that we've had this week from the Office of Budget Responsibility. I have to say, I saw that report come out and my jaw just hit the floor. Really, I mean, it was such a biased piece of work. It's really not credible. Now, I understand that the OBR can't really forecast anything. Very often, it can barely get a 3-month forecast right. So how on earth it can forecast this for the long term, which interestingly, I noted in that report wasn't really defined as any specific period of time. It was this kind of like vague future idea that Brexit's going to cause harm to the economy. Well, you can't really it wasn't even a sensible forecast from my point of view. But of course, the other thing that the ABR didn't do was take into account any of the potential benefits of Brexit. None whatsoever. The kind of things that I've just been talking about, the potential benefit of doing free trade deals with countries outside the European Union, beefing up our presence on the world stage, cutting red tape, bureaucracy, being able to grow the economy.
Yes.
The ABR took none of that into consideration whatsoever.
Okay. All right. So I can understand why you wouldn't want to believe the Observer and you wouldn't want to believe predictions about what might happen in the future. What about the organisation representing UK manufacturers, which said there are no benefits as a result of Brexit? Make UK is the organisation.
Yeah,
they say that it's currently hard for manufacturers to see any advantages from leaving the EU. And the organisation warns that exports to the bloc could become a permanent problem if the government doesn't step in, which it seems disinclined to do.
Well, again, we just simply haven't had any opportunities because of COVID, because of lockdowns, because of global international supply chain problems. I think a lot of, and I think going back to the Observer poll, people can only be polled and answer questions on issues that they are told about. And unfortunately, I think there has been a push by much of the media to try and, for instance, blame the shortage of HGV drivers on Brexit and ignore the fact and not put into the public domain the actual truth, which is that Germany also has a massive, for one example, has a massive shortage of HGV drivers. It's short of between 45,000 and 65,000.
But there's 100 million people live in Germany, and we have over 100,000 driver shortages in this country with about 65 million.
Okay, yeah, absolutely we do. But, you can also lay some of the blame to that at the feet of government as well. 40,000 HGV driver tests were cancelled because of COVID in the past 18 months. There is a 56,000 backlog of vocational driving licences sitting in the DVLA, not going anywhere because of COVID.
Right.
You can't blame Brexit for this.
Okay, all right.
You might want to blame Brexit for the fact that the combination of Brexit and COVID did indeed lead to some HGV drivers going back to their original homes in EU countries. But I'm sorry, this kind of blanket idea that Brexit is responsible for everything, when we've had a massive pandemic which has left our country 2.2 trillion in debt, the highest level of debt to GDP ratio we've had since the Second World War.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's just completely unrealistic.
But you are decrying a blanket explanation that some of these problems are to do with Brexit, while giving the blanket explanation that none of it's to do with Brexit because you can't distinguish between it and COVID.
No, I don't think I've said that at all. In fact, I think I said earlier in this interview that, that perhaps the government hasn't handled things as well as it could have done. And I'd absolutely say that's the truth. I don't believe this government has taken advantage of Brexit as it could have done. I think some of that is because of the pandemic, but certainly not all of it.
Okay, well, we've been through the Observer. That you didn't like that. You don't like predictions of what might happen in the future. The manufacturers are perhaps misinformed about what it is that ails their businesses. How about the Wall Street Journal? They have compared our upswing in trade with our nearest competitors and found us wanting. The global upswing in trade, says the Wall Street Journal, is leaving the UK behind in what they say is an early sign of the challenge that Brexit is presenting to the economy.
Well, that's just one opinion, isn't it? There are plenty of other measures which suggest that actually our economy is going to do rather better
a prediction
than other world economies.
A prediction about what might happen in the future.
You seem to be the fan of those, not me. But you can't say on the one hand that one prediction is right and another prediction isn't. You take your pick and make your choice accordingly. My point is very firmly that, no, I would absolutely agree. We have not taken advantage of Brexit, not by any means. There is still a hell of a lot of work to do. And I, for one, look forward to the day, as I said, when we can put COVID behind us and actually get on with the job of getting Brexit done in a way that is beneficial for the nation.
Okay, The Observer, predictions about the future from the government's own organisation, manufacturers, the Wall Street Journal. How about the Food and Drink Federation, which shows that food and drink exports to the EU were down 16% on the same period in the previous year. That's down by over a quarter compared to the first half of 2019. Meat and dairy products have been worst hit. I mean, we know about the fish industry and the problems that they're having. So the manufacturing business is telling us that it's ruinous, and so is the food business.
Well, I mean, we could, I'm sure, both sit here for the rest of the evening and come up with a long list of people who think Brexit's been good, and a long list of people who think Brexit has been bad. And
is there a long list of people that think that Brexit's been? I mean, I've given you a long list of people that think it's bad. Do you have any that think it's good?
Well, I haven't, I'm sure there are. I mean, the fact is our economy, despite everything that's happening, is actually doing significantly better than some other European economies. And overall it's doing better.
Name the economy that's doing better then.
It's doing better than the Eurozone. I mean, okay, we have a problem here with growing inflation, but you look, for instance, in Germany, inflation is accelerating at a faster pace than it is here. So it is in Spain as well. I think it's up as far as 5.5% in Spain. So we must be doing something right.
Well, the UK stands out for the weakness of its recovery in trade. So says the Wall Street Journal. Export volumes at the end of July 16% lower than the end of 2019. At the same time, in the US, exports were only 4% lower and imports were 7% higher. Our imports are flat. Our exports are 16% lower. The US is 4% lower, a quarter as bad as us. Euro area exports were flat, and imports were up 2%. So by every measure, really, that I can see, we're doing worse than America, worse than Europe, worse than all of our major competitor countries. And I ask again, I have more of these, but I'm running out of time. I've given a long list of organisations that say that Brexit is ruinous, but your answer to my question, do you have a list of those that say that it's beneficial? You said there might well be, or worse to that effect.
Well, you've obviously sat down before this interview and thought, I'm just going to come up with a long list of things to chuck at Suzanne Evans. I'm not the government. Maybe you could ask government ministers that question. I'm somebody who campaigned to leave. And my argument was always, and I think 52% of the population voted for leave, not just on economic grounds. On the contrary. In fact, for many people, the economic arguable benefits of being in the single market, for instance, were not actually why they ticked that box on their referendum paper. We voted to take back control. That was the main thrust of the EU referendum campaign. It was about not being... No, let me finish. It was about not being beholden to bureaucrats in Brussels. And in fact, in every poll that we did with Vote Leave, the economic... we were told, weren't we? We had Project Fear. Everyone from the Bank of England, Bank of England's Mark Carney, to the IFS, so everybody lined up and told us that Brexit was going to be bad for us economically. But the fact is,
but it is. It wasn't Project Fear.
Because that wasn't their main concern.
Yeah, not Project Fear. Project Fact, surely. That was Suzanne Evans talking to me earlier, and I appreciate her time. That was an invigorating chat. She was previously the Deputy Chairman of UKIP and is now the Director of the Public Affairs Consultancy Political Insight, as well as a political commentator. So, I mean, you heard what I said, you heard what she said. Who's right here? It seems as though the people that wanted us out respected the will of the people, of 52% of the people that could be bothered to go out and vote. 53% now say that Brexit is having a bad effect on the economy, on them personally, prices in the shops, that sort of thing. Is it odd that they utterly respect the decision that 52% made on one day, but after all this time dismiss the opinions of those very same people as being too soon to tell. Come on. 0345 6060 973. If it's too soon to tell now what effect Brexit has had, and if all of the people that were right, apparently, to vote out are now wrong to express an opinion on what that vote has visited upon them, when is not too soon? How long do we have to wait? A survey says almost twice as many voters now believe that Brexit is having a negative effect on the UK economy as think it is benefiting the nation's finances. This is according to the latest opinion poll for The Observer. The survey comes after Richard Hughes, the chairman of the Office for Budget Responsibility, said that his organisation calculated that the negative impact of GDP caused by the UK's exit from the EU was expected to be twice as bad as that resulting from the pandemic. Hughes said Brexit would reduce the UK's potential GDP by about 4% in the long term, while the pandemic would cut it by a further 2%. In the long term, it is the case that Brexit has a bigger impact than the pandemic, he said. Now, this survey last week by Ipsos Mori showed concern about the effects of Brexit rising to the point that it's now seen as the biggest issue for the country alongside COVID-19. It's curious, isn't it? Before this campaign to get us out appeared out of nowhere, people weren't considering the EU as being problematic at all. It wasn't front of mind. It wasn't at the top of the people's list. It wasn't really something that this country considered, apart from a few vigorous flag wavers who are taking a break from watching the History Channel, revelling in the good old days. We just weren't bothered about it. And then suddenly, out of what appeared to be nowhere, came these supposed grassroots campaigns, which were not really that at all, which persuaded us that when we thought that things were going along okay, they were actually disastrous, and we had to change tack. And the leave or the campaign to get us out insisted, still does, that all of those people that voted to take us out knew what they were voting for and were correct in doing that. But the same campaign people who wanted us out now dismiss the opinion of the very same people who say, well, it's been a catastrophe. So we're either right or we're wrong, not both. Pick one. 0345 6060 973. Benjamin tweets, it sounded like Suzanne Evans can't accept the results of Brexit. A listener with material. Thanks, Benjamin. Reading. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Nick. I found Susan Evans' comments absolutely insulting to anybody that's got any intelligence, because we have seen the effects of Brexit even through the eyes of when we've had this government trying to get people to actually listen to instruction through COVID. After all, we don't need experts, so why listen to experts? And I'm sorry to say, Miss Evans dresses it up like we can speak in a vibrant tone and actually believe that all these wonderful things have sort of been curtailed by COVID. But all that's happened really is that COVID has actually masked the fact that Brexit has happened.
Well, I think that it will always be the excuse to go to immediately, that if Brexit is not working for some reason, it's not Brexit, it's the COVID, or and this I think is informs why our government is going to consistently pick a fight with France. They don't want, or Europe in general, is they don't want an agreement. They want an excuse as to why Brexit isn't working, which will be because the European Union is being mean to us.
Nick, I'm just waiting for Brian from Stockton-on-Tees or wherever he is to phone up and give us a Brexit benefit.
Well, I thought it was instructive that I gave Suzanne quite an opportunity to give us anyone that professes that Brexit has been a success. I had no end of organisations that have to deal with this problem who say that it's been a disaster. I mean, I actually ran out of time to continue the list, but none came back. I think it's still a sort of theoretical, if only you believe, then it'll be okay. And it's unpatriotic people who don't believe enough that have caused the problem that means that Brexit is not the nirvana that was advertised. Thanks, Gary. Oldham. Stephen.
Nick, hi.
Stephen.
Hello. Bit unprepared, a bit nervous. But I'd just really like to echo the thoughts of the last caller. I totally agree with him, totally agree with you. I'd like to thank you for actually making people aware of the total catastrophe that Brexit has and will be for the next, I don't know, I'm not an expert, Nick. Let's make figures up like everybody else does. 20 years? Something like that.
It seems to be permanently baked in that we will... I mean, the thing with it is that there was not going to be one moment where people say, aha, that's what has happened to us. There's not going to be... Excuse me, hang on. There's not going to be one hurdle that we reach and we'll say, that's the reason. It's just going to be like a slowly deflating party balloon. We're just going to be a less vigorous country out than in, which seems so predictable. It actually was predicted, but the predictions were called Project Fear, and the people that said them were called unpatriotic, which seems like such a thin and desperate argument to me. The reason that Brexit is not a success is because you're not waving your flag vigorously enough. And there does seem to be a sense of desperation in the people that sold this to us, that the promises are not being realised, as people that warned us of this impending catastrophe were saying all along. No such sunny uplands exist. Thanks, Stephen. Dorothy in Potter's Bar says, I voted out and I feel much better now that we are out. The economy has nothing to do with it. Well, what does have anything to do with it? What makes you feel better, Dorothy? Other than, perhaps, the knowledge that the other side is suffering. I think that's where we are with this. It doesn't matter that people are suffering. It's that the other side is also suffering. People will put up with any privation as long as they feel that the competition is suffering as well. What a bizarre place we've engineered for ourselves. OK, back to the issue of whether Brexit is the perfumed nirvana that was advertised. 0345 6060 973. Lee in Greater Manchester. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good. I'm going to upset you now because I am an absolute Brexiteer.
How's it going for you so far?
Oh, total disgust, disappointment, the whole, what do they call it? The whole thing, anyway. So disappointed. I'm a red wall voter, by the way. Never, ever voted Tory in my life before.
And how's that working out for you?
It's not.
Right.
So disappointed, disgusted with our Prime Minister, if that's what you call him. Not what I call him, but
What would you say to people who insist that we knew what we were voting for?
Oh, I've never ever voted yes for Europe. I've always voted no. I've voted 3 times since 1970, whatever it was, 74.
Right.
I've voted no 3 times.
But now you've got what you want. It's still not what you want.
No, and I have to say I blame the government, but I also blame the EU, because I do honestly think the EU have been so childish and pathetic about the whole thing that they didn't want us to leave. They still don't want us to leave.
Well, no, we inconvenienced them and cost them, a lot of money by upending everything that had been, bedded in for decades. But the EU being mean to us seems like a bit of a hollow argument when it's us that negotiated the deal, signed the deal. The deal was sold to the public as being a fantastic deal, and the moment that the deal was voted through, they said, "Oh, this deal? No, this is a terrible deal. Why would anybody vote for this deal? I want the name of the moron who negotiated this deal," said the person who negotiated this deal. I mean, they didn't use those words, but that seems to be the implication ever since. And I think the right-wing press and the politicians on that side of the argument will forever blame the European Union for being mean to us, because it gets them out of a hole that all of the promises that they made aren't coming true. We were lied to, essentially, about all of the aspects to Brexit. And the people that were, in retrospect, telling the truth were derided as Project Fear. That people are still saying that now. But I hope things get better for you, Chris, and that your dreams in some way come true. But I doubt it. Monmouth, hello, Anne.
Hello there. Hi.
Anne.
Hi. That's very facetious of you to say perfumed Nirvana. Quite frankly, I don't think anybody expected it to change overnight.
Overnight?
Well, that's just putting a fine term on it. Nobody expected it to happen for a long time. I certainly didn't.
Well, who said that? I mean, when it was sold to us, who said that we'd have to wait for years? No one.
Well, did anyone think it was... That's what I just said. Did anyone think it was going to change instantly? How could it?
Well, what's instant? I mean, it's going to be almost 2 years. It's like over 5 years since the referendum.
Yeah, but we've had 2 years of a pandemic, haven't we? So it's bound to have thrown
so has everywhere else.
Well, they're not improving much either, are they?
They're doing better than we are. America is doing better than we are. The European Union is doing better than we are.
Let's not follow America. Again, like you just said, not changing the subject totally, but the entourage in Rome, that wouldn't make any difference to Italians, because, I mean, they're if they've got 5 kids in the family, they have 5 cars in the drive. So, all this blurb about, climate change. I've been a vegan for 40 years. I don't drive a car. I've got a license. I choose not to. I don't fly all over the world.
Okay, well, like you said, let's not change the subject.
Let's not change the subject. No, let's stick to Brexit.
Yeah.
I love Boris Johnson. My family have always been conservative. I don't lead a conservative lifestyle, but I do think he's wonderful, to be honest with you.
In what way? You think he's
because
wonderful? How?
Everyone's
funny?
No, he doesn't have to be a comedian. No.
You think
who he is.
He's
a good Prime Minister, yeah.
You think he's truthful?
Yes, I do.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Despite all of the evidence to the contrary?
Which evidence? He's not a liar. He's not a liar. He's doing the best he can.
Oh, my God. I don't believe you said it. I'm going to actually pull my hair out from parts of my anatomy that are really going to hurt if one more person says he's doing his best. He's not a child. People talk about him as though he is a 4-year-old that's been asked to clean up their room. And they make more of a mess in cleaning it up, but the parents look at each other and say, "Oh, he's doing his best." Like you just ask the dog to make you breakfast, and the dog forgets to warm the teapot. He's doing his best. For crying out loud, Anne, I can't stand it anymore. Unfortunately, that's the end of the show, so I don't have to.